2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Smartin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
In today's episode of Project Recovery,
throughout my 20s, people had told me, like, you're an alcoholic, or you need to slow down, or, like, you could not convince me. I knew who I was, what I was, even though looking back, like, I should have realized this a long time ago.
Make sure you listen to the end. Find us on Facebook at Project Recovery. We'll have that and much more coming up. Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. And it's brought to you by our friends at knowyourscript.org. They got a 3-part solution to the opioid epidemic. It is speak out, opt out, and of course, throw out. Now, Dr. Matt, if people wanted more information about Know Your Script, where would they go?
knowyourscript.org.
Right there, that's got all kinds of information, how to talk to your doctor, how to talk to your kids, how to talk to yourself. And so go check them out. And without them, we couldn't be doing this podcast. So, Dr. Matt, how are you?
I'm good.
You seem a little frazzled.
It's just been, it's been a busy day already. Anytime you have big, wide clinic meetings on Zoom, it's a little, can't wait to get out of there.
Now, the Zoom meetings are the new normal, and I think slowly we're getting back into the new normal. I don't think the new normal will ever be normal.
It'll become the norm.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
But it'll never go back to the way it was.
The old norm. Yeah. No, and actually, I'm not somebody who puts down Zoom. It's like when there's too many people and everybody wants to have their say, and you get a bunch of psychologists and psychiatrists thinking they have to say something smart in the meeting, then, yeah, it can drag on a little bit. But as far as Zoom goes, I really like it. I think it's really convenient. A lot of our patients who live in rural areas who would take 30 minutes to maybe 2 hours, 3 hours to come see us don't have to do that. It's very patient friendly. It's great.
And when you think about it, that was the same reason why you might not have somebody reach out to you, because the access to help wasn't readily available, and now it is.
Yeah, if you think about pre-COVID, they were starting to try that technology, right, with virtual visits with your doctor, telehealth, right? But it was pretty clunky, and there were a lot of limitations. And to be honest, insurance companies were looking for every which way to not pay for it. And so hospitals and physicians wanted to offer it, but insurance companies typically stand in the way of progress for their own bottom line. I don't have an agenda. And they were stopping it, but now they couldn't stop the flood. Now they're pushing back again, trying to limit what we can do telehealth-wise. But I think telehealth is a fantastic result of a terrible year.
Now, on this podcast, the first 10 minutes or so are kind of an update of what's going on with me and what's going on with you.
Yeah.
And I had a couple things that I wanted to bring to the table, if you will.
Yeah.
So I just got back on a 4-day golf vacation.
That's right.
Down to the St. George Mesquite area. And in the years past, this would have been a drunken mess. This was a vacation that started on a Thursday and ended on a Sunday. And drinking would be highly prevalent.
Would have started Wednesday night.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And gone all the way through.
And normally it would have taken me 2 or 3 days just to recover, to start feeling normal again. And I haven't gone in the past 2 years because I just didn't feel secure.
So this is a regular annual trip with your buddies?
Yeah.
From college?
From college
Right.
and from high school. Some people come in the group, some people go out. But for the main part, there's been a core group.
So over the years, I've heard you talk about this trip. And I know that you're exactly right. There was a lot of recovery time required in the past after this trip was over.
If you want to go back and look at the times that I was on TV and I came back, you would see my eyes were like just puffy. I mean, it wasn't good. I'm not proud of the way we acted.
Yeah.
I am proud of the way we acted this time. I was down there, and there's a couple things that I wanted to talk to you about. I was down in Mesquite, where gambling is prevalent and partying is prevalent, and you can get a beer anytime you want and all that. I was in bed by 10:30 every night.
Were you really?
I was in bed by 10:30 every night. I went to the casino, had a good time, and woke up in the morning. We golfed 27 holes every day, which is a lot of golf.
That's a lot of golf.
Yeah, but it was a blast. But I felt so refreshed when I got back. I mean, normally I got back on a Sunday night. I was at the gym Sunday morning, and it felt good. Monday morning, yeah. But something happened down there that I wanted to talk to you about. So we're all sitting around a craps table, and the cocktail waitress comes by.
Okay.
Cocktails.
You're not going to quiz me on craps, sorry, because I have no idea how
No,
that
I'm not
going to
quiz you on craps.
It looks cool, though.
They asked me, and I go, I'm going to get water. And this guy, who wasn't really part of the group, but he just came on this trip, goes, do you want a drink? And I go, no, I'm cool. And then my other buddy leans over and goes, I wouldn't let you drink if you wanted to, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then I go, hey, stop. I appreciate the sentiment. I think that's great. Mm-hmm. But you're not in control of my drinking. I am. And sometimes it bugs me when people say, I wouldn't let you if you wanted to. Because the truth is, if I want to,
you're going to find a way.
I can get it done. Yep. I can go get it done. Right. I'm not drinking, not because somebody's telling me not to. I'm not drinking because it's not good for me. And I know where this goes. And so sometimes people will tell me things like, even if you wanted to, I wouldn't let you.
But don't you think that was just really his way of showing his brotherly support?
Yeah.
That he loves you and doesn't want you to do it. But I hear what you're saying is it's maybe good to set the record straight to your close friends that, hey, you're really got this. You're in charge of what happens going forward.
For the first time in my life, and I'm 47, I feel I am in charge of my life. I make my decisions, and I'm doing what makes sense to me and what feels good for me and my family. And so there's something so empowering about that. And it just feels so good. And I'm stoked. I came back from that trip, felt good, and let's go. It was just another milestone, another feather in my cap that I went, okay, I do have this. Yeah. I'm going forward. I don't have it completely, but I know which direction I'm going.
Well, that's great. That's impressive. And you remember the trip, right?
All of it.
And the conversations. And I think that's one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about, and I've talked with lots of people about, is when you have a big drunken party weekend, it's kind of like wasted time because you rarely remember any of the fun that you had.
You just get snapshots in your head. Oh, yeah, I think that. Yeah.
And it usually comes with a lot of embarrassment and maybe apologies. And
right? I know all too much about that.
And it's nice to come home and not have to make a list of people you need to call and apologize to.
Here's another thing that I've been thinking about over the past week. A lot of times when I'm out and about and I'm talking to people about recovery and talking to people about my journey and my story and where I was able to go to recovery and the things that I was able to do, a common thing that people will say to me is, yeah, I'd like to get into recovery, but it's just too expensive.
We hear that a lot.
It's just too expensive. And I want to say, really? How expensive was those drugs? How expensive is that alcohol?
Right.
How expensive is it the court costs? How expensive is it losing your job? Mm-hmm. And so it's so crazy that we'll put a value on recovery and say that it's too expensive. But when it comes to drugs, we'll do whatever we can to get those and find those.
Lie, cheat, and steal.
Whatever it takes, you will do that to feed your habit.
Right.
Why wouldn't you apply the same principles and the same motive to getting sober?
It's a good question. Why do you think?
Well, and I don't have the answer, but I do know.
Well, what's your inclination, though? What do you think? Why is it? Why do people put so much effort into the one and not the other?
I mean, you do it because you think you need it. It makes you feel better.
I think it's a disease. I think in the moment you kind of do need it. It drives you, right? It's a brain disease.
Yeah.
I think you're sick. I think there's an element of mental illness that gets you to do things. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to sitting in my office, tears running down their face, talking about how they broke into someone's house the night before and stole things, and how humiliated they were to tell me that they did that because or they stole from a person's car. They go around the parking lot and flip all the handles until one of them opens, and they take the ashtray full of change or whatever it is. All the humiliating things that people have done.
They'll sell their body.
To sell their body. We've had people here on the show very candidly talk about prostituting themselves for drugs. So why do you think people won't go to those, obviously not the exact same behaviors, but to the same effort level to get in recovery?
I don't know. I wish I had the answer, but I hear that a lot, and I'm not disagreeing, and I'm not saying that it's not expensive, but it is expensive. But when you say it's your happiness, your life, your well-being, you should be able to fight for it just as hard as the other.
What do you say to somebody who says, "But Casey, I don't have any money.
Then
I'm broke. I've lost my job. I'm going to be homeless. How do I pay for recovery?"
I understand that. There's a lot of options out there. Although you might not be able to go to the same place I did for recovery, there are so many other options out there that can help you. Most churches have a good program that will help you out if you ask them to help you out. There's a lot of state-funded projects out there that'll help you out. I'm a part of a website, Facebook community called Addicted We Stand. Right. And some guy went on there and said, "I'm looking for a scholarship." And he got 4.
Wow.
And he was saying, "I wasn't even forced. This is something that I just wanted, and I put it out, and I asked, and lo and behold, somebody says, 'You know what? Yeah, we'll figure out a way to get you in.'" And so I
think you and I, at least I'll just speak for myself, I think hopelessness, okay, so the factor I would say is hopelessness is what stops people. They're hopeless. I don't have any money. I need money to pay for these things. They feel hopeless because their life is probably at some level of rock bottom, and so they don't do it. Mm-hmm. But I've been so happy to learn that there are resources out there for people. If you'll just step up and ask, and if you'll put the same amount of energy, even half the amount of energy, into finding a recovery program that you put into finding drugs, you will find a recovery program. You're absolutely right. There are private agencies that will scholarship you. There are churches that have programs that are free, and there are state and county programs that are free or very low cost. And if you are considering that you can't go to rehab right now because you don't have the money, just go for it. Somehow it'll get paid for, I promise.
I love that. And that's kind of what this podcast is all about, is hope, is giving people hope. And our guest today, her name is Heather Henderson. She's got a unique story. You're going to want to stick around and find out why she's here.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. Don't miss Cold's new Season 3, where I look into the unsolved disappearance of Cherie Warren, a woman last seen leaving her job at a Salt Lake City office in 1985. Police cast suspicion on Cherie's estranged husband and boyfriend, but never made any arrests or recovered Cherie's remains. Find Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, anywhere you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That is Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist. Our guest today is Heather Henderson. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
All right, now before you say anything else, I've got something that I think you guys are both going to enjoy. Hold on. Reach to my back pocket.
Oh.
Here's a letter. Casey Scott, words can never express how grateful I am to have met you. You were not brought into my life by chance. Thank you so much for listening to me over and over again. You helped me realize that I'm not alone, that life is worth living, and that it could get better. Thank you so much for believing in me when I had lost all hope. I have said many times, and I will continue to say, that you and Mary Kay saved my life. I know I've done the work, but I couldn't have done it alone. I'm so damn grateful to be alive, to be sober today, and to be able to have Pinnacle in my life. I can finally look in the mirror and know the person looking back. I can see my worth and value again. I've made it through so much, and I'm here for a reason. I have a story to tell and people to inspire. You're an amazing person. You have inspired me a lot, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much. You will be missed, but I know it's not a goodbye. Sending you so much love and happiness, Heather.
Hey, that's amazing. That's
Heather wrote me this letter how long ago?
Well, it's over a year now. January of last year.
So, Dr. Matt, I don't know if you remember me reading this a little over a year ago.
I do now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Heather was the first person that I got into recovery, who called me one night on a phone in despair. I spent probably 3 or 4 nights talking to you, in and out of drunkenness. She'd put me on hold Why she'd go in and order cigarettes.
Oh, yeah?
And then come back and just pick up and go. And I kept telling her, it's okay. We can figure this out. I promise you. We can get you help. And I know a place that can do that. And cool. I can't believe you're here today to tell your story.
I know. I remember you showing up to detox with a pack of the cigarettes I smoked. And I was like, how do you know what I smoke? You're just like, you don't remember all this?
She'd be on the phone with me just screaming at the world, just mad. You had a lot of anger. You were pissed off at the world. You really were. And rightfully so. You were in a bad situation. And we're going to find out more about that in just a second. But how does the story of Heather begin?
You guys, this is like interesting.
Well, I always like to, I like to hear, and I think the listeners like to hear a little bit about your background. So maybe just tell us a little bit about where you grew up and size of your family and kind of what life was like for you a little bit when you were younger, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. I was born in Michigan. I moved to Utah when I was 2. My mom chased love.
Your mom chased love?
Yeah.
That's a very poetic way of saying she moved you guys all the way across the country for a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We moved around a lot. Didn't really have a stable home. So it's me and my sister. And I have another sister who lives in Michigan that I don't really know. My dad was never really present in my life. He is an alcoholic. The most I know of him is being like visiting in and out of prison. He was driving drunk one night and like with his girlfriend, and I don't think her door was shut all the way. She didn't have a seatbelt on, and they hit a bump or something, and she ended up, I think, falling out of the car, and I don't know if she passed or I don't know that one too well, but he was in prison for that incident? Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of how I knew him. And when you're little, I guess it's normal and he's your dad. But needless to say, you didn't really have an opportunity to make much of a strong connection with your dad if he wasn't present and if he was in prison and drinking. No. So that's kind of where my stepdad comes in, and that's the man that I will forever call my father. He was a heroin addict. So a lot of addiction in my life early on. Your stepfather, the one you are connected to, was a heroin addict also? Yes. Okay. So dad's an alcoholic. He's not in my life. My stepdad's a heroin addict, and like he got clean, and this is where I picture like what I would say a normal life. Like we went to church, we had a nice house, I went to school, and like that's what normal felt like to me. So like life was good. I was about 9 years old, and him and my mom had been getting in arguments, and he said, I'm going to the store, and he never came back. And they found him dead with a needle in his arm about a week or so later. So that's kind of when my life just took a big change, and we kind of left everything that I knew and what felt like normal. From like Riverton to West Jordan, and my mom worked all the time. So, and my sister's 4 years older, so she was a teenager, she had friends, so it was kind of like me to figure out my life.
So you kind of just were left to your own device.
Yeah.
And figuring out this big, crazy world and having a big change happen.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you had a little sliver of time, despite your stepdad's addiction, where life felt pretty stable and normal. It was from 2 to 9 or so about 7 years. And then what was that like having to, I mean, do you remember the news and hearing of your stepfather passing away and how life changed at that point?
I remember my mom coming home, and she hadn't smoked in years, and she was smoking a cigarette. And we were like, why is my mom here? And she just told us that his name is Jack, that he's dead. I don't really remember a lot. I don't think I can understand it at that age, but I feel like that was a huge change in my life.
Well, it must have been traumatic. Mm-hmm. I think sounds like that relationship with Jack felt good and stable to you. I can tell you have a lot of affection still for him and feeling like he was a father figure, or a father, really, a father for you in your life. And then to have him be gone, that must have kind of rocked your sense of stability.
Yeah, I didn't really have stability or anyone to be a dad to me. And it, I don't know.
And so you guys moved within the state of Utah to West Jordan, it sounds like. Is that right? And your mom was working all the time. What did she do?
I don't know. She does like insurance and billing. I don't remember the name of the company, but
kind of office work.
Yeah.
And that she was gone a lot. And your sister being older, it sounds like you were implying your sister had her own life and her own support system because she had friends and she was becoming a teenager and all of that. Mm-hmm. So what did you focus on then? You're, I guess, 9 years old. What are we in? Going into fourth grade or something by then? So you're still pretty tender, pretty young. What was elementary school like for you? What did you focus on after moving?
Elementary school was good. I was a quiet kid. I played a lot outside, and it was not, I don't know, it wasn't until junior high where it changed. So I was still quiet. I just hung out at home, and when junior high came around, typical story, I met the wrong people who are accepting, and that's when I started using, like smoking weed.
Going into junior high, did you feel like you didn't really have a friend group? You didn't really connect with it? Or did you have a bunch of friends in elementary school?
I think in elementary school, I had friends in the neighborhood. Like, I tried to continue to go to church. And so I had those types of relationships and community, I guess. But when junior high hit, I wanted something different. I want to be popular, more accepted.
Kind of like Casey, real popular.
No, but I understand you. You wanted to. You had a different vision of how your life was going to go, and so you were going to take some chances.
And we've talked a lot about that's the age where that happens, right? I mean, junior high, you kind of want to stand out and be noticed. You want to be popular. You know, that's a driving factor when you're that age.
You know, for 20 years, I was a smoker. And I used to tell people that smokers are the most outgoing people you'll ever meet. If you were ever having a cigarette outside of a building next to another smoker, by the time that cigarette was done, you knew more about that guy than you needed because they just talked. And so I think that kind of crowd invites anybody in. And your only fee for admittance is to do it. Yeah. And as long as you're going to do it, come on. They'd be like, oh, he's kind of weird, but he gets high. Come on. And then they bring you in. I mean, it's crazy how that works. The word
accepting, right? That crowd is like you said, as long as you want to participate with the activity, you're one of the gang.
Yeah, you're in. And so you found yourself running with a bad crowd. You said that's when you started smoking weed. Is that when you started drinking as well?
Yeah, I think my first shot was when I was 14.
Do you remember that?
I do. I don't remember. Well, I don't think I liked it, but
Jim Gaffigan has a thing where he's like, when you're a teenager, you drink and you're like, I know this is bad for me, and then as you get older, you develop a taste for it. But do you remember the circumstances of that first shot? Was it at a party? Was it with this new group of friends? Were you alone? What do you remember?
It was at a party. I was just with one of my girlfriends and like boys that were a grade older than us. I don't know. It wasn't anything crazy. We just took a few shots. I don't really remember much else. Not that it was a blackout, just that I don't remember that.
So sort of uneventful, but that was the beginning of drinking. And you said you were with older boys. Did that play a role in junior high? Because as you've already mentioned today, your kind of father figures in your life were difficult. And so sometimes when a young person gets into that adolescent age and they start to be attracted to boys, then that can be an extra strong draw if they haven't had a strong male figure in their life. Not to be a psychologist about it or anything,
but he is.
But did you remember that being? Were you kind of boy crazy at that time, or was that still not a big deal for you?
I think now and looking back, yes, my whole 20s will show that same thing. My whole teens, looking for love and acceptance in men, boys, that just wasn't great.
So how did your junior high and high school years go? Were you drinking and partying the whole time? Were you still going to school? Were you getting in trouble? What did that look like?
I went to school. I started getting in trouble. I would shoplift, so it introduced me to the courts. I was just in and out of DT all the time, like where the staff knew me, and for some reason I thought that was cool. And so I was still going to school, sloughing. I went to like 2 different 30-day programs, and I was like, okay, my life's going to be better.
Were these 30-day programs for alcohol, drugs?
Or bad behavior?
I don't think the first one was. We talked about my drinking and drug using. I think it was more just to set me straight. I don't think it was focused around that.
There are a lot of adolescent programs for kids that, the adults in their lives can see them starting to go off the path. Mm-hmm. So usually there's some drinking, and it's usually a little bit of weed involved, and then but they're not doing well in school. They've gotten in trouble for petty things like shoplifting, and that sort of stuff. So those were probably those types of programs trying to get you back on track. Did they work? Did you come out of there ready to be on track or not?
Not yet. I still just wanted to hang out with these people. I was drinking like cough medicine with a straw. Like it was just so cool. Taking cough medicine, like
with a straw.
Cold. Yeah. Like,
okay, I didn't.
So just anything you
more
could get
sophisticated.
Anything you could get your hands on.
Yeah, I tried a lot during those years. But it wasn't till like one day my mom had went out of town. She never goes out of town. I'd had people at our house the night before. And the next day I was hanging out with them at a different friend's house, and they told us, like, I didn't feel good about the situation. I called my sister to come pick me up. This is when they held like guns to my head, and I don't know that they were like really loaded or like we're really gonna to shoot you. But
so hold on, let me get a little bit more of a guns just came out in the story, and I wasn't prepared for that. So let's get a little context. So you're in high school at this point. Maybe how old do you think?
I was 16.
Okay. And you had, kind of in party mode all the time, but especially now because mom's out of town.
Yeah.
The night before you had a party at your house because mom wasn't there. Mm-hmm. But then this next day you're over at a friend's house. Are these kids you're hanging out with also 16-year-old kids, or are you hanging out with kids that are beyond high school at this point? And what kind of partying was happening? Was it just weed and alcohol? Or is this a real like party drug scene?
I believe it's just weed and alcohol.
Okay. Yeah. And kids your age, or?
Some of them were my age, some were a grade older.
Okay, so high school kids. Mm-hmm. So how do guns get introduced into this? How does that happen?
I don't know where they got them. They had them, I guess, like gangsterish.
Yeah, little gangsta wannabes, right? And so they got some guns, but was it a party atmosphere? Or was it getting scary? Like, what was it?
I mean, you should never play around with guns, but I mean, were they trying to scare you girls, or was there like malicious intent with them pulling them out?
I can't say for sure, but I didn't feel comfortable, and they pretty much told me, if you don't let us go back to your house, we're just going to break it anyway.
Oh, okay. So they had pulled the guns out to intimidate you.
I believe so, yeah.
And why did they want to go back to your house so bad? Because there was no supervision?
I don't even remember, like maybe to drink the rest of my mom's alcohol. But just was not a good feeling, and I ended up telling my sister not to come pick me up.
Wait, you called her to come pick you up, and then you told her not to pick you up?
Yeah, after that happened. Because I was worried, and there was a history of these kids doing other acts that I did not put it past them to really break into my house, so I thought it was just better if I went.
So they succeeded in intimidating you to go back to your house.
Yeah. There is a point to all this. So we get to my house, and I actually hadn't been drinking that night, I remember. And it was the first shot that I took that night. I asked someone, can I use your drink as a chaser? I don't remember anything after that. One drink. So when I woke up in the morning, I couldn't even walk. Like, I had popped my knee out. My cell phone's broken. There's holes in my walls. My whole house is just destroyed. And this was when I finally woke up and realized these people don't care about me. And it's time to change. So I ended up going to I believe a 60 or a 90-day program.
Do you believe you'd been drugged that night? Like, that's, for somebody who's used to drinking, you just had one shot and a chaser, doesn't seem like you'd black out all night.
It's harder to say that because I've never really talked about that part. I do believe that I was. Just not knowing what had happened. Because I've had blackout moments, but not like that young and not off one drink.
Yeah, it seems unlikely. And I think for most people, not really knowing what happened during blackout moments is a scary thing to try to think about what could have happened. Was there any other indication you'd been assaulted during that time?
My mom took me to the hospital, but I didn't want to know. I feel like it would have been harder to know. So I talked her out of it, and to this day I don't know. I'm at peace with that.
Okay.
I don't know.
What happened? Because of that, you signed yourself up for a 60 or 90-day in treatment facility?
I think my mom called my probation officer. I don't even think I was still on probation, but I may have been at the end of it. She came and picked me up the next night and took me to DT. And
what is DT?
Like juvenile jail.
Oh, detention?
Juvenile detention, yeah.
Okay.
It's up by your house there in Farmington.
Moeta.
Yeah, that's one of them.
I just know that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you did 60 days there, and you said that's the first time you thought, these guys don't care about me.
Yeah.
And you wanted to do something different.
Yeah, I was over at that point. I finally woke up. I started going to school once I got home. I graduated high school, which I'm lucky. I found out the day before graduation, like, you made it, you can do it. I was like, So that felt really good. To be the first one in my family who did graduate, and it was a big accomplishment for me. Then after that, I hung out with a different group that knew like my group, but they weren't really connected.
But there's a lot of high school left between the time you went into treatment when you were 16 and when you graduated. Did you try to drift back to those same friends that didn't care about you, or did you find new friends, or did you just kind of solo your way through high school?
Well, I might have been at the end of being 16, and then in the program.
Okay, so
17. I didn't go back. No, I avoided.
Because that's a big one for people that age. I mean, our friends when we're adolescents mean everything to us, and they're actually part of our identity. That's a tough, not only were you giving up drinking and using drugs, but probably had to give up your friend group as well.
I did, that one, but I still had friends just in a different kind of group. I don't remember a lot about like the end of high school right there. Just that I tried to do better. And
well, you graduated, and that's saying something, and you said that was a proud moment in your life. Mm-hmm. So then now you're 18, you're a graduate, and you said you're hanging out with some friends that have mutual friends with your old group. Are you back to partying? Are you drinking? Are you smoking? What are you doing?
Yes. So I'm back to drinking. It's when I started to experiment with ecstasy, and so I did that a lot on the weekends. So they were better friends. We were just in a different experimental phase. This part's just kind of hazy. I ended up getting kicked. Well, my mom gave me an ultimatum. She's like, get a job or get out. And somehow, like, I perceived that as I'm getting kicked out, and I didn't have anywhere to go. So I called a friend who's a friend of my sister as well. She lives in a very big party house. Like theme parties every weekend. It's just where I would go with my sister. I called her and I said, can I spend the night at your house? And I ended up being there for 3 years. So that just took me to a whole different level of partying and drinking. I got a job at Brighton, and if you know ski resorts, like it's one big party, and it just turned into like every day I was drinking. And it's me moving on to finding love, if we go back to that, in a lot of the wrong people. Acceptance. Just, I don't know. It's a haze.
But so you're partying, and you said you lived there for 3 years, drinking daily. Mm-hmm. At any point, did you think to yourself, this is not right? This is not what normal people do. Or did this seem normal to you?
This seemed normal. It was fun. It was like a huge sense of belonging. Like, our house was the house to be, so I felt... And these were all older girls than me, so by like 4 or 5 years. And I just felt really good about it.
So you found a community, really. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a community where acceptance kind of comes pretty easily and quickly. But along with it, it sounds like came a lot of problems. How about what you saw around you in this house? Like, what were the lives like of these other girls? Did they seem productive and happy and progressive, or were other girls starting to have problems because of their lifestyle?
The main one, she was very responsible. She didn't drink as much as the other ones of us did. So, I don't know, she seemed to have her life together. The other one, to me, did as well. Or maybe my idea of life together was showing up. You have a job.
So they were functional. They were functional. They had jobs, but they were partying, and they kind of, as sounds like older sister type people in your life were maybe kind of modeling to you that, hey, we can party and we can work and everything's okay. Tell us about, you said they threw theme parties. I'm dying over here just to know. Can you give us an example of like this was a theme party house? I'm kind of curious what was going on.
I just feel like every weekend, like a bunch of kegers, and like we did a lingerie party, a toga party. I don't know. Everything was just like a huge celebration.
Okay.
I don't even know if for a reason.
Well, I mean, probably just to celebrate, but I mean, it sounds like an enticing place to be when you're 18, 19, 20, and you don't really have any other place to be. They kind of sound like they were fun and partying, but functional. And compared to your other group of friends from high school, did you feel cared for and important to these friends, or did that change as well?
I hugely felt like they were my family. They cared about me. They taught me a lot of things. I'm still close with them today. They had my best interests at heart. I wasn't at a time to listen to them. Like, they'd tell me, don't drink this much, or don't do that at night. Like, but I was still free to just be. So
they sort of took an older sister role, but they didn't really have the power to make you change, and so they tried to give you advice, and you weren't one to listen, it sounds like. No.
I've learned that I always like to learn things the hard way. Hey, I have to learn it my way.
I'm one of those as well. So how does the run at the party house end for you?
So I ended up meeting a boy. This is like my first serious boyfriend. We met at Brighton. I ended up moving in with him and his mom. Like, we lived in the basement. So it's so interesting to look back at so many different chapters. This is like, she was a CEO of a company, like nice house, respectable family. And then it's still like my Brighton friends. And I just turned into like this snob. Like, money is where it's supposed to be, the nice clothes and this. And we drank a lot. I can't say it was really a healthy relationship, but partying was just always there. I still had a job, and I don't know, not much sense of purpose in my life. So I ended up getting pregnant. I think this is where my life kind of started on a darker path.
You say that, and we've had many people sit in the same chair as you who said, this is when my life started on a darker path. But now I'm curious, with you looking back on a sober mind and sober eyes, realizing that you were so kind of always on a darker path.
Yeah, and there are moments, If I look back, it all was pretty dark and lonely.
It's crazy how manipulative the addictive brain is, and how it can reframe, reshape, retell things to you that make you seem like this is normal. Because I can tell you now, I lived something similar to that, where life was a party. And now I look back and I go, just kind of like you did, where it's like, it's kind of sad. I really had no purpose.
Yeah.
Now I have 3 kids and a great girlfriend and family, and I find purpose. But what made you think that this path you were about to journey down was a darker place? What happened?
It's just more of that seeking acceptance and love in all the wrong places. That leads me on like the next however many years. But I got pregnant, and his mom basically told me, you should get an abortion. Your child's never going to have a life. I'm at a time in my life where other people's opinions are strong. Like, I didn't have a voice, and I believed them. So I have like my family telling me, you can do this, you can make it. They've all had children when they were like 19 years old. I was now 21. So I kind of ended up going through with this, not realizing then that I have a voice and the choice was ultimately mine. So it was just a lot of loss and sadness after that happened.
So you gave up the child?
I did. It's definitely not one of my proud moments, and I know that it's a very controversial topic. But I don't know, there is a story on the other side. And
did you ever have time to process that? Or do you think that drove you deeper into drugs and alcohol?
It led me much deeper. I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it, people that understood. So I think I went to alcohol as
a way to escape?
A way to make it better or not feel. I guess that's like it's really numbing.
You said your family had been supportive, saying you can do this. What was their reaction to your decision?
They love and accept me. They weren't proud or believed in it. Like, they didn't support me through the process, but...
Do you feel like they were judgmental and disappointed in you, or do you feel like they understood your decision?
I don't know. That's a good question. I can't say right now.
Okay.
So it drives you deeper into drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And where does your life go from there?
I ended up going back to live with my roommates.
To the party house.
She had kids by then, so it definitely calmed down, and it wasn't a party house any longer, and I don't even know what I was doing with my life.
Did that end your relationship with that boy?
Yes, we had actually broken up before the pregnancy happened. We kind of just couldn't let go or carried it on longer than it should have. And so I just had a lot of hate and anger for him for a lot of years. And I think that fed my drinking as well. Like, there's just no outlet, and it's so just perceived just very poorly. And I don't know if I'm articulating myself correctly, but...
No.
Well, I think, I mean, the image I'm getting, honestly, is of a young woman who has a lot of stress and pressure going on in life, but really feels very few genuine connections or places to let out, talk out, be emotive with. Even though you had these friends at the house and you have family, you're not describing to me like a place you felt like you really belonged and that you could go. And so the alternative is we stuff those feelings down, right? And we stuff them and we hold them inside and we numb out with drugs and alcohol, and those become our outlets, in air quotes. That becomes our way of dealing with the stress and pressures, the anger. I could tell right away that was a genuine emotion that you were having by the way you looked, saying that this boy had basically let you down and abandoned you. But who do you talk to? Where do you go? So if you don't have a great outlet, you go inward, and you go inward with a friend called alcohol, and that makes things worse, doesn't it?
Always. For me, I think that it makes it better, and maybe it feels like that in the moment. So I just feel like the next couple years are just kind of a blur. I just tried to seek love in a lot of unhealthy places, or I think filling that void, probably that I'm missing from my stepdad, but as well as like the loss of my child. So I don't know, I drank a lot, I blacked out a lot, I was kind of just living.
At that point
breathing.
of your life, was your family worried about you?
I think throughout my 20s, people had told me, like, you're an alcoholic, or you need to slow down, or...
Maybe both.
Yeah, but it never really...
Sunk in?
Like, you could not convince me. I knew who I was, what I was, even though looking back, like, I should have realized this a long time ago. I don't know. I ended up working at a strip club as a bartender, and we served, like, non-alcoholic drinks, so it's like, you need a Red Bull. But that led to more drinking and allowing people to take advantage of me. So that was just another dark place I was at for 4.5 years, and it was okay to drink there as long as you kept it on the DL. And so I would just be driving drunk like almost every night, and just it was okay. I ended up getting a DUI, so this is when I'm 24. So whatever happened between 21 and 24,
kind of a blur.
I don't know. I'll reflect on that, but I got a DUI, and that's kind of when I woke up. I was not an alcoholic. Can't convince me of that. Then I was on probation for a little bit, and I had a breathalyzer in my car. And this is when I decided I'm going to do a year of no drinking, just to show myself and everyone else, like, I can do this. I'm not an alcoholic. And I did.
That's amazing, because that's the dream of many alcoholics. Most people don't go so ambitious of saying a year. They'll say 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and they will hold on that as tight as they can to anybody who comes up and even utters the word alcoholic. They'll go, really? An alcoholic can't go a month without drinking, and guess who just did that? Me. They won't tell you it was in 2012, but they'll say.
But
hey,
that's absolutely true. And alcoholics count those days, those weeks, those months, and they sure pull them out when they feel like they need justification that they're not an alcoholic.
So you went a whole year without drinking. Did you notice your life had improved during that year?
It was one of the best years of my life. I went on so many different vacations. I felt like I knew who I was. I was happy. I had goals, and my whole life had changed. It was such a good year.
Do you remember that year really well?
I do.
Look at the difference between your memory, because we're getting a lot of that was a hazy time, that was a foggy time, and now the year you're not drinking, you remember all the fun times, the vacations, the goals. I like that you said you start to have goals, because that happens. As soon as we get healthy and sober and happy, we start to want more for ourselves, right? We're like, man, the life I'm living right now is not good enough. Yeah. And so you started setting goals for yourself.
So why did you start drinking again?
Because it was only for a year. So I set it between my 25th birthday. You
got your DUI when you were 24.
23. No, I don't know. I spent my whole 25th year of life sober, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
Started on my 25th birthday. The day I turned 26, me and my mom went to Vegas. And my plan was to drink. Like, we had stocked up on bottles. Like,
so you weren't going to have a drink. You were stuck. She put her arms out. We stocked up on bottles. You were going to really drink.
Yeah. And my mom is a good time.
Is your mom an alcoholic?
I would say she is.
Would she say she is?
She has different views on it. Like, maybe she would say she is a functioning alcoholic.
Okay.
She might.
But that's not for us to say, and, that's her story.
It's not, but I mean, I think the reason I asked it so bluntly like that is this is what Heather's dealing with. Heather's dealing with the examples of the people around her as she's an impressionable young woman.
100%.
And it's very, very hard when you have someone like your own parent. And hey, I'm a parent who makes mistakes, and all parents make mistakes. I'm not trying to throw your mom under the bus, but if you're trying to understand yourself, or if I'm trying to understand myself, we have to look at where were our models, who taught us what's normal, who taught us what's okay. What's the standard? And in this case, I think, unfortunately, your mom, instead of celebrating with you a year of sobriety, and you must have looked happy and felt better, and she's helping you drink. And so I wondered if that's a problem for her too. That's the model that she unwittingly was providing for you, I guess.
Yeah, she definitely normalized drinking growing up. But maybe not everyone was convinced I was an alcoholic, or that a year of not drinking would make me better, or I healed in some way. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really feel like anyone told me you shouldn't go back to drinking. It was like, good job.
So you succeeded when you went to Vegas. Did you get tore up?
I did. Threw up. I was proven really quickly why I probably shouldn't be drinking again. Everything's in excess. It's not like, let me just have a drink and enjoy my night. It's like, you need to go harder, and
that's the addict brain.
You want to make up.
I understood when you said, well, I'm going to Vegas and I'm going to stock up. You saw Dr. Matt's reaction. He's like, oh, you put your arms out. And for most addicts like us would think, yeah, if I'm going to Vegas, this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. That's us. Most normal people go, oh, no, we're going to go down there and have a few drinks and gamble and see what it's about. But that's not how we think.
No. So
you get back from Vegas, you start drinking. Is it an everyday occurrence?
Not yet. That's so funny you said the memory thing, because now I'm like, what happened after?
Well, alcohol definitely affects our memories. And I think most people who've had long periods of drinking will tell you that they don't remember those times in their lives as well as the times when they were sober. Our brain just works better when it's not intoxicated.
I remember in my 20s going up to a bar, looking over, seeing a beautiful brunette next to me. And me going, hey. She goes, hey, Casey Scott. And she goes, I know. You did this to me last week.
And you're like, yeah, I remember.
But just to go to prove your point that alcohol, it blurs the lines. It makes you forget things. It numbs the stuff. It's not a good drug. And I say drug because that's what it is. It's not. Some people can handle it. Some people can't. I can't handle it. So you're back to drinking, and we're back to blurry times in your life. But you're rocked by a health scare. Let's talk about that.
Well, when do I talk about Hudson? Because Hudson came first.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about your son. Because I've seen pictures of this beautiful little boy.
Yeah, he's very handsome. I don't know. Life happened. I got into a very unhealthy relationship. He's an addict. But in that time, he got sober. I ended up getting sober, and I felt like we were in love, and I really wanted a child, and we ended up getting pregnant. We moved in together. Just
living the dream.
Yeah.
No. I mean, right or no?
That's what you feel like it should be. Yes. In my case, it was anything but a dream. But yeah, I have what I've always wanted, right? The family, the boyfriend, my own house. It felt good for a little bit. Just a lot of stress, unhealthiness. I ended up having my son. That was the greatest feeling ever in my life. And I wasn't drinking or anything at that time or for a few months after he was born. But when he was 4 months old, I found out that I had cancer. I got cancer from my pregnancy, so it's either that part of the placenta stayed in, didn't expel on its own, or some of it went bad while he was in utero. So this was just a huge downfall in my life. Everything just didn't feel good when it should be one of the most happy times with my son. I don't really know. I started drinking a little bit before I found out I had cancer, but...
How did that affect your relationship with your boyfriend? You both had just gotten sober, moved in together. Now you have a brand new baby and this diagnosis of cancer. How did that affect your relationship?
We didn't really have a relationship. I don't feel like he was using throughout the time of me going through cancer. Maybe he tried to be supportive, but it wasn't there. We weren't healthy people. It only drew me farther into addiction. So I'm going through chemo, and I drank and used cocaine through because I couldn't cope. No one really knew what I was going through. I lived in just a terrible home environment, and I don't know. I couldn't say that for a long time. Who drinks through chemo? But that's just how bad our addictions are to cope.
Did you reach out? Did you try to talk to your mom or anyone else about what you were going through at that time?
I had a really good friend who actually got breast cancer a few months before I did. And my son's father, his dad, battles cancer. So those two people were a real rock, and his mom as well. So I was close with the family. So I had people, and it's really helpful to have people that understand it.
Kind of relate to maybe what you're going through. Did you admit to them that you were drinking and using cocaine during your chemo treatments?
No.
You kept that to yourself, huh?
Yeah, I think my boyfriend, he knew. But no, I hid it as best as I could, and it just only got worse. I ended up losing my hair. It was my treatment before my last, and I couldn't even watch those videos for such a long time because I was drunk the whole way through. And you don't want to see that because you don't recognize that person. That's not me.
Videos that someone had taken of you during that time?
Yeah, I did a Facebook Live.
I hate Facebook Live, and I hate the memories because they pop up on me, too. They were like, hey, do you remember this? And I'll look at the picture, and I can tell that I'm plastered in it, and it guts me. And I just go, damn you, Facebook. But I see those, and I know exactly what you're saying because it's I know I'm not that guy, but in that picture, I'm that guy, and it breaks my heart to know where I was and what I was doing in the frame of mind that I was in. So you're afraid to look at old videos of you, and you lose your hair.
Yeah. So all around, it was just not a great situation. New baby, trying to navigate life, lost my hair. I just felt ugly on the inside as well as the out, and I ended up, it was right after that, I ended up moving out, which was great, but it led me on, that was in April, got sober in November, just that whole thing. That's when I was drinking morning to night. So you think it'd get better once I leave this relationship, move back in with my sister.
Where's your son in all
great
this?
Support. He was split between me and him.
Mm-hmm.
He did like 50-50. Yeah, that's the hardest part about it, I feel like, is my son was part of my addiction, and you get too drunk that you go chase cocaine to feel awake again, and I have driven drunk with my son, and I'm extremely lucky that he's okay today. You just do anything for alcohol, or your drug. I would steal movies for my sister to pawn to get alcohol for that day, and it's just very dark. And I just realized that I needed help, and everyone around me told me, well, what about your job? What about your son? Why isn't your son enough? That one killed me the most. Because you look at your kid in your eyes and you'd be like, why aren't you enough? That hurt a lot. But it wasn't about him not being enough. It's about me not being enough. No self-worth. And so everyone around me gave me reasons why I should, or why can't I just quit drinking. Questions you ask yourself every morning before you do it again. And every night you swear tomorrow's going to be different. And it never is. But yeah, that's how I somehow found Casey, and it's the first person in my life, or my addiction, that made me feel like I'm not alone, that there are people who know what I'm going through, and that it's possible. So him and Mary Kay, I truly believe, saved my life. I put in the work, but I was just so ready and broken, and I don't know. I'm 16 months sober tomorrow, and
you're what? 2 years cancer-free today?
Yeah. Today.
Yeah.
Today.
Wow. That's wonderful.
So it's been a lot these last couple years, but my life is so much better today. It's not always easy. Through my 9th and 10th month of sobriety, life was so hard I thought about ending my life. It didn't go that deep. There was no attempt. It was just I was in so much pain that I didn't want to feel that way anymore. But I knew I didn't want to drink or use drugs because I know what that feels like. I don't ever want to feel that way again. But it's sad to think something else is an option. But you just get through it, and it's better.
Well, I think it's normal to when we're in the pits of despair to want to escape and to be free of that, and that's where a lot of people turn to their addiction. But if you're not turning to your addiction, sometimes people do turn to thoughts of suicide, and that's why suicide and drug addiction and recovery, they're all related issues. But today, what would you say? I mean, it sounds like two people you mentioned, both Casey and Mary Kay, were instrumental in creating that connection for you to help you feel, I assume, the hope that you could power through and do the work and become sober. Was there any particular, sometimes we call them modalities, was there something that you learned or that you did in treatment that really kind of was your thing, or maybe still is something that you do today to help you stay sober?
You just have to really want it. But one thing that sticks out to me is all your feelings want is to be felt. I don't know why I was 29 or 30 years old and no one ever told me it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel these emotions and they pass. I think just knowing that, and that you can get through whatever feeling, you don't need something to numb it, is very empowering for me, because if I look at it, every moment does pass. I don't know. I just want it.
Well, I think that's a great answer, actually. I mean, I'm not too surprised to hear you say that a big part of your recovery has to do with getting in touch with and owning your emotions. Because I think you've painted this picture of a person, and it's very common, where people grow up without the right mentors, without the right modeling from parents, to know that it is okay to feel however you feel, and that all feelings have purpose in our lives, and the uncomfortable ones can still teach us something, and they don't last forever. And it's a very mindful approach in recovery to learn to sit with your uncomfortable feelings, sit with them, experience the sadness, experience, the frustration or the regret, whatever it is, and sit with it and connect with others and learn solutions and realize that, it does pass. And that one of the things that I always challenge people to think about is that every emotion has two parts. An emotion has the feeling part, which is what we usually think is the same as the emotion, and it has the information part. And if it's a positive emotion, like happiness, then we're usually pretty good with that. That feels good. And so we don't dig too deep. We just I'll just feel happy. That's great. But if it's an uncomfortable emotion, like sadness or despair, we try to push that away, and unfortunately, we miss out on the information. There's information in that feeling that makes it an emotion, and if we can tap into that, then we can do something. We can make something better. That negative, so to speak, emotion is trying to tell us something, and if we can tap into that, then that information can result in behavior change that lasts instead of numbing out the feeling that we're uncomfortable with. Yeah. And so I can tell that you really, really do want it, and that, like we say 1,000 times on this show, the opposite of addiction is
connection.
And you've made some wonderful connections. Casey is a really loving, supporting person, isn't he?
Yeah.
No, I mean, he really is. And I'm not saying because I've known Casey from a long ways back, when I think his personality was just a fun personality, but he has a really loving connection. So does Mary Kay. And aren't we grateful for the people that allow us into their world and to connect with those loving, supportive personality traits? But I'm also glad to hear that you threw in there, I did the work, because you got to own it to keep it going.
The interesting thing about this podcast and what Dr. Matt just said about the two parts of emotion, the feelings and the information. There was probably 5 times during this podcast that I saw you feel something that you probably haven't said out loud or felt in a long time. And I could see your brain processing that information. It was fascinating to sit here and watch it. Because, I know you've been in recovery for 16 months, and I don't think you've ever been able to tell your story on a platform like this. And some of the things that you said out loud were probably the first times that you've said them out loud ever. And what you are doing is giving information to so many people out there who need to hear that. And your story will help so many others. It really is. And when Dr. Matt asked you what kind of modalities and things you're using to keep your recovery, I love the fact that you said to feel your feelings. But I also know you well enough that service is a huge part of it. So much in the fact that you went back and did the same thing I did and worked for Pinnacle Recovery. You're still working there today. And as we were driving up in the elevator, you're now over in the billing department. But you told me, I just want to get back in the house because that's where I recharge my battery. That's where I help others. And that's what you're doing by doing this podcast today. You are helping others. And it was uncomfortable, and you cried many times. But I am so proud to call you my friend, and I'm so thankful that you stopped by today and shared your story. Because we say it all the time in recovery. If my story just helps one person, it's worth it. And your story is going to help more than just one person. So thank you.
That's huge. Thank you, guys.
You're amazing.
To be here.
Dr. Matt?
Well, just again, thank you. You're a lovely person, and you have a real positive energy that I hope you continue to find ways to share with other people, which of course will benefit you and benefit the people you come in contact with. And man, I feel like you just are starting to live life now, that all that haziness is behind you and you're going to have good memories going forward. So congratulations and keep up the good work.
And we want to say thank you for stopping by and listening to Project Recovery today. Don't forget, it's brought to you by our friends at knowyourscript.org. Project Recovery is a KSL podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
She was tear-gassed and beaten.
Images of thousands desperate to escape Taliban oppression filled our news feeds. More than 80,000 Afghans made it to America, but the story didn't end there.
It was very cold, there was no power, no heat.
Who would help our newest neighbors? I'm Andrea Smartin. In Stranger Becomes Neighbor, you'll hear the stories of some remarkable refugees who left their homes and their dreams behind, only to start over from zero.
Their only possession was 3 blankets.
And you'll meet Americans who stepped up to help them.
You want me to come when you deliver your baby.
What can one person do in the face of an international disaster decades in the making? That's Stranger Becomes Neighbor. Find us at kslpodcast.com, follow us on Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.